We're up to the Mishnah now on Daf Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. After wishing you a Chodesh Tov, Mazgu Lo Kos Shlishi. So we've already discussed the first two kosos, the kos of Kiddush, followed by the kos of Magid, and now we're up to the third kos after the Suda, which is Mevarech al Mazono, and the third of the fourth kosos is connected to the bracha of Birkas HaMazon. And then afterwards, Revi. Then they pour the fourth kos, V'gomer Vas HaHalel. So they began the Hallel, if you recall, before the Suda, and that was the first two paragraphs of Hallel. The remainder, the balance of Hallel, will be recited after the Suda over the fourth kos. The Omer Olav, in addition to Hallel, we recite something called Birchas Hashir. So there's going to be a combination of A plus B on the fourth kos. A is Hallel, and that means the balance of Hallel that was not recited before the Suda, and B, Birchas Hashir. We don't know exactly what Birchas Hashir is. That's going to be the Sugya on Daf Kuf Yud Ches. Now, the Mishnah addresses the following question. Is he permitted to drink additional kosos beyond the four kosos? And the Mishnah says in Rotza Lishtos Yishteh, although he's allowed to drink between the first kos and the second kos, that's before the Suda, he's allowed to drink during the Suda, that means between the second and the third kosos, but ben kos shlishi ulevi lo yishteh, he's not allowed to drink wine between the third and fourth kosos. And the reason for this is, according to Rashbam, because although wine that you drink before the Suda doesn't get you drunk, but wine that you drink after the Suda will get you drunk, and we're afraid that if you get drunk, you won't be able to makayim the mitzvah of Hallel the way you're supposed to. Now, with regard to wine in the meal, that's not mashaka, that doesn't cause intoxication, and therefore you could drink wine freely during the Suda, which would mean between the second and the third kosos. Yayin between the first and the second kosos is mutter, because that's before the Suda, and it's not mashaka. So let's just go over this once again. And we'll try adding wine in between each of the kosos. So in between the first and the second kosos, that's okay, because that's before the meal. And yayin before the meal is not meshake. Between the second and the third kosos, well, once again, you're talking about the Suda itself, and yayin during the Suda is not meshake. So once you've recited and drunk the second kos, then you eat the Suda, and during the Suda you're allowed to drink because it's not meshake. Then we get to the third kos, and now you want to drink after the third kos, before the fourth kos. That's a problem, because that's going to cause shikrus, and we're afraid he won't be able to be mekayim the mitzvah of Hallel. Now, as far as drinking a fifth kos after the fourth kos, that should be mutter, because he already fulfilled the mitzvah of Hallel. So even if he gets drunk, there's no loss. Now, in the footnote here, number Chav Zayin, on the bottom right, he quotes the Orchos Chaim. And he says that no, maybe between the first and the second kosos, he should not be drinking wine. And even though we said that before the Suda, wine doesn't get you drunk, but nevertheless, says the Orchos Chaim, he should try to be careful about this. And therefore, between the first and the second kosos, he should not drink wine, because then he won't be able to recite Magid and the whole Seder and the reading of the Haggadah, and even though we have no problem after the second kos, meaning during the Suda, that's not a problem. Between the first and the second kosos, he says that although Yain Lifnei Hamazon Ein Meshaker, Mikol Makom Royally Zor Shelo Lishtos Ben Kos Rishon L'Sheni Im Lo Litzorach Gadol. Meaning that Yain inside this, during the Suda, that's not Meshaker at all. And Yain after the Suda, between the third and the fourth kosses, is very, very dangerous, so to speak. As far as Yain between the first and the second kosses is concerned, then although it's before the Suda and it's not Meshaker, but nevertheless, it could have some impact on him, which might prevent him from fulfilling the mitzvah of Haggadah in the most perfect way. And therefore, unless it's Litzorach Gadol, which again, I'm not sure what Litzorach Gadol is, but I'm assuming that they didn't have any other liquids at the table to drink. All they had was wine in that particular scenario, and that's called Litzorach Gadol. But other than that, if it's not Litzorach Gadol, he should avoid drinking wine just for the sake of drinking wine. It might have an impact on his recitation of the Haggadah. Now, he quotes a Rashbam, which goes back on Daf Kuf Ches, about something that's called Yayin Ma'orer Tava, that wine could actually stimulate the appetite. And therefore could be that the reason why you're allowed to drink wine between the first and the second kosos is, even if you'll tell me, well, maybe the Orchos Chaim is right, we should avoid it because it might cause some lack of, lucidity in his mind, but nevertheless, we have a reason, dafka, to drink extra wine between the first and the second kosos. And that's to be ma'ora the taiva, meaning, as we saw at the beginning of our perek, that we don't eat too much on Erev Pesach, so that it'll eat a matzah, l'teyava. We want to be ma'or his teyava, and therefore we're going to allow drinking an extra kos of yayin between the first and the second kosos to be ma'orer his taiva, so that he'll eat the matzah l'teyava. However, after the kos shlishis, which is the kos of Birkas Hamazon, he's no longer eating, and there's no reason to try to arouse his appetite. He's finished with his meal. Now, I'm not 100% sure if my interpretation here is correct, that when he wants to stimulate the appetite, it's for the purpose of eating matzah l'teyov, and I'm not sure. It might be for the purpose of an appetite for the seuda, because the seuda is a kiyum of Simchas Yontif. But in any event, after the third kos, there's no inyan to be ma'ores teyov, and he already finished his suda. So if there's no reason that would vote you in favor of drinking between the third and the fourth kosos, and since it's after the Suda, when yain is very, very powerful in its impact on the mind, and he hasn't yet recited Hallel, therefore, we're not going to allow drinking wine between the third and the fourth kosos. So again, he's finished his Suda, so there's no reason to advocate and push in favor of drinking wine to be ma'or the teyov, and he finished his Suda. And on the other hand, it's yain liachar seuda, which is mishaker, and it might prevent him from reciting the Hallel in the proper frame of mind. So therefore, between the third and the fourth kosos, he should not be drinking. Now, of course, when he gets to the fourth kos, obviously he's going to drink to be mekayim the mitzvah of the fourth kos, And by then he's already recited the entire Hallel. However, there's another factor here that has to be accounted for, which we haven't mentioned today. Forgetting about Meshaker, he might get intoxicated, he won't be able to recite Hallel properly. There's another issue here, and that's called Nireh Kemosif ala Kosos. By drinking extra wine, it looks like he's not satisfied with the rabbinic enactment to drink 4 cups of wine. He wants to drink a 5th cup of wine. In other words, he's being mosif to the takonis chachamim. The chachamim is saking 4, and there's significance, as we've seen in the past, to the number 4. He wants to add another kos, and it looks like for him 4 kosos is not enough. Now, if he's drinking in the middle of the Suda, clearly that's a reshus. That's not a shtia shel chova. It doesn't look like he's adding an extra kos. It's in the context of his meal, he drinks wine. That was the way they used to do it. If, on the other hand, he drinks between the 3rd and the 4th kosos, and we said we had a problem of Shem Yishtaker, now we can add an additional problem of Nireh Kemosif ala Kosos. But then you'll ask me the same question, what about between the 1st and the 2nd kosos, which we said technically is mutter, because Yayin before the Suda is not Meshaker, but wouldn't it look like he's being Mosif ala Kosos? So perhaps we could suggest the following, that since the Yayin before the Suda is Ma'orer Taiva, therefore that extra cup of wine that he drinks before the Suda is not Nireh Kemosif ala Kosos, but rather it's Ma'orer his Te'oma, and that's what's motivating him. Now let's add another point over here. After the Birkas Hamazon, one second, is it before? I'm sorry, before Birkas Hamazon, at the end of the Suda, he's going to eat a piece of matzah for the Afikomen. And with regard to matzah, Afikomen, there's a loch of tam matzah befid. If he drinks after the Afikoman, then it could be that he's being mevatel tam matzah mipiv, which would mean that to drink after the 3rd kos would come under 3 different problems. Number 1, Shem Yishtaker, and he won't say Hallel. Number 2, it's Nireh Kemosif ala Kosos. And number 3, it's Mevatel Tam Matzah Mipiv. Now the question is, what if he wants to drink after the 3rd course of Birkas Hamazon, other mashkim? He's not drinking intoxicating beverages. If the prohibition of drinking between the 3rd and the 4th kosos is because of meshaker, that he might not finish the Hallel properly, well, he's drinking non-intoxicating beverages. That should be fine. If the issue is Mosif ala Kosos, there would be no problem with Mosif ala Kosos by drinking apple juice. But if, on the other hand, the problem is tam matzah befiv, then we may want to avoid apple juice as well. And finally, the question is, can he drink another kos after the 4 kosos? When there's no problem of Shemi Yishtaker, he's already fulfilled his mitzvah of Hallel. And then we have the issue of being Mavatal Tam Matzah Befiv, and the issue of being Mosef Halakosos. So that even though the Mishnah only mentions Kos Revi, where is it? Bein Shlishi Revi, it doesn't mention Liachar Revi. And therefore, you and I would have assumed that between Shlishi and Revi, the problem is Shemi Yishtaker, and we don't care after the 4th kos. So if there is a prohibition of adding a kos after kos number 4, the Mishnah should have mentioned that. And the Mishnah is totally, exclusively focused on between the 3rd and the 4th kosos. What about after the 4th kos? And although Shemi Yishtaker is no longer a problem, but Mevatel Tam Matzah Befiv, Tam Fikomen, and you might have an additional problem that's near Kamos Valakosos. It was very strange that that wasn't mentioned in the Mishnah. Now let's take a look for a moment at the Yalkut HaBi'urim in the back of the Mesifta for Kuf Yud Zayin Amid Beis. So we're on page, one second, I'm trying to get the right page here. Bear with me if you can. So we're on page Reish Pei Tes. Bottom left. Ha'im mutal lishtos achrei kos revius. Habalamor kosav she'ein lanu limchos biyado. If he drinks after the 4th kos, we're not going to make a big deal about it. We're not going to protest. And in the Chuvas of Haigoin, he's already fulfilled the Hallel, the complete Hallel. Therefore, if he gets drunk, he doesn't lose anything. And therefore, it should be okay to drink after the 4th kos. However, the Mordechai, which you'll see on the top page for H Tzadi, has to add another condition. He wants to drink after the 4th kos. He's not going to recite Hallel, so he finished his Hallel, there's no problem with Shemi Yishtaker, but what about Kemos Valakosos? Says the Mordechai, I have to add another condition, that it's very important that he is Masalik the Shulchan. In other words, as long as the Shulchan is there, and if he drinks a 5th kos, it's near Kemos Valakosos. But if he's Masalik the Shulchan, that means he's finished with the Seder. He's made almost a public announcement the Seder is over, Lashon Haba B'Yushalayim, and now he wants to drink wine. That's fine. It's not Kemos Valakosos if he's already been Masalik the Shulchan. Aval ala Shulchan, no. If he's still got the table there, it looks like he's adding a 5th kos. So until now, we've allowed for drinking a fifth kos, and there may be one scenario in which l'chatchili shouldn't do so if he wasn't misalik teshula, but basically, we're going to permit drinking a fifth kos. Ad kan. Now we have another shita. And this shita, if you take a look, is the manig, it's halachas gedolos, it's Rav Amram Gon, the Ritzgeis, the Rav Ismail Shahor, Ramban, a who's list here. And they say also lishtos yain le'achar daled kosas, period. Again, the Mishnah didn't mention it. And Tosas quotes Rabbi Yosef Tov Elam that even to drink water after the fourth kos should be avoided because of ta'am matzah b'fiv. So we have a combination of yayin as a problem because of most of alakosos and other beverages which are not intoxicating because of the problem of being mevatel ta'am afikom and b'fiv. So we have here the Rif and the Rambam that the problem of drinking almost any beverage after Birkas Hamazon and after the fourth kos is the problem of Ta'am Matzah B'fiv because of the Afikom. The Ravid says that if he'll drink and eat after the Dalet Kosos, Lo tehei nikeres shtias adalit kosos. Okay, that's very similar to most valakos, but not b'toras baltosiv. But you know what? He's drinking so much wine this evening. How do you know that the 4 cups of wine were cups that he drank for the purpose of the mitzvah? And the whole point of dalit kosos is heker cherus, to demonstrate that you're ben chorim. The Ramban says, Lo yehei mosif al arba kosas. He should not add a 5th kos. V'nira kemisha mastil b'seder acher. It looks like he's starting a new seder. He's going all the way back to square one, drinking the first of the 4 kosas. Fine. I remember my father-in-law used to say that he was disappointed when he came to Eretz Yisrael on Pesach that he didn't have a second seder. I mean, we made a second seder for him, but so this man is making a second seder on the first night of Pesach. He finished the Seder, and now he's starting all over again. He's going to drink another kos of yayin, which is his 5th. Then he's going to eat the matzah, the maror, all thing. Not a good idea. And why not? Because we're very sensitive to the zecher le'migdash. And the halacha in migdash is that the central part of the Seder is not just the matzah that we eat, but also the Korban Pesach that we eat. When the Mikdash stood, that was the hub of the Seder, the essence of the Seder. And the halacha is you're only allowed to eat the Pesach on one Korban Pesach that you're manui, and you can't join another chabura. If you start again the entire Seder, then what it looks like is like you're creating a new chabura to eat the Korban Pesach, which we're not allowed to do. We can only be part of one chabura. We can't create another chabura. It's not like WhatsApp groups. You know, you can be part of 50 million WhatsApp groups. But here, with Korban Pesach, you're part of one group and only one group. And that's your chabura that you have money on, and therefore to eat another round of Korban Pesach is not acceptable. V'od. Im kain lo ya Pesach nechal asova. Once again, we have the issue of Pesach al asova. V'chein matzah. Hainu shimnati lo lechol v'lishtos acher achilas ha-Pesach. Lo yochel kol tzarko lifnei achilas haPesach. Lo yikayim achila kedina shedin haPesach sheyochel al hasova. So he says the following: if we allow him to eat and drink after the Afikomon, and when the Mikdash stood, obviously is the Korban Pesach itself, then he's going to be very careful before he eats the Pesach not to eat too much, because he won't have room for the Korban Pesach. It'll become what's called an Achila Gasa. But on the other hand, because of his concern, he might not eat enough of a Suda. What does that mean, lo yikayim adina kedina? Since when do we care if he doesn't eat enough and he doesn't fill up his belly? Maybe we should be advocating that for health purposes. No, it's a problem. Why? Because everybody got their sliver of the Korban Pesach meat, a kizayis worth, let's say, and that kizayis has to be eaten al asova, which means he's almost satiated. He has just a little bit more room in his belly, and that room will be in his belly will be filled in by the Korban Pesach. That's called al asova. Al asova means that it takes you over from not being totally satiated to being totally satiated. And if he's going to be very careful about eating, because he's anticipating eating the Korban Pesach, so he's going to minimize his achila, and he might come to violate, or shall we say, non-fulfillment of the mitzvah of achilas Pesach al asova. So this is all the Ramban in Milchamas Hashem. And now we get to the Rosh. Hatam, a minig shelo lishtos yayinhu, fi shechayev adam laso kol halayla bilchas Pesach u'yitzias Mitzrayim l'sap b'nisim thosim. Beautiful. The Rosh is saying that, okay, you finished the Hallel, and you drank the fourth kos. So the chashash, based on which we prohibited drinking after the third kos before the fourth kos, that he might get drunk and he won't fulfill the mitzvah of Hallel, we can have the same chashash after the fourth kos, although he's finished the Magid, but he still has to throw himself into the study of the laws of Pesach. And it means that the mitzvah of Sipiyat Mitzrayim continues throughout the night until he falls asleep. And if he's going to start drinking after the fourth kos, when he finishes Magid and his Hallel, he might get drunk, and then he won't be able to make this mitzvah of Chayav Adam Lasog Behilchas HaPesach Kol Oso Laila. And the Mordechai says, simply don't drink a fifth kos because it's near Kimotz Valakosos. So it's interesting if we compare and contrast the Ravid to the Mordechai, that's Beis to Hay. The Ravid doesn't want drinking or eating after the Daled Kosos because it's going to upset, I'll use the word Lemafreya retroactively, the Daled Kosos that he drank. The Mordechai is saying, no. The exact opposite is the problem. Meaning, the Ravid is saying that by drinking the extra kos, he's going to strip all the kosos of the heker of l'shem mitzvah. Whereas according to the Mordechai, the opposite is true. That not only the fourth kosos is nikar l'shem mitzvah, but even the fifth kos is nikar l'shem mitzvah. And therefore, he becomes a mosav ala kos. So let's just quickly summarize these 5 shitos. The Rif and the Rambam are of the opinion that by drinking after the fourth kos, you're going to upset the afikomen. In fact, the Rif and the Rambam say not only are you enjoying from drinking wine after the fourth kos, you're also enjoying from drinking other beverages that would be mavatal tam, matzah, afikomen, befir. Then we have the Ravid. The Ravid is worried that if you continue drinking after the 4 kosos, then people will think that even the first 4 kosos were just being drunk for the sake of pleasure and not for the sake of a mitzvah. The Ramban says that if he drinks a 5th kos, then it looks like he's starting his Seder all over again. And that we can't allow because ein ochlin es apesa b'shnei chaburos. Furthermore, the Ramban says that if we'll allow him to eat and drink after the Korban Pesach, he's going to be very stingy about how much he eats of the meal before the Korban Pesach, and he might not eat the Korban Pesach ala sova. The Rosh says, this I found the most brilliant chap, that just like, we don't want you to drink after the 3rd kos because you still have to say Hallel, you might get drunk. Don't drink after the 4th kos because you still have to recite Sibritis Mitzrayim throughout the night and to learn Hilchas Pesach during the course of the night. And finally, on the Mordechai, that's Nireh Kemosiv ala Kosos. Okay, that was good. 5 shitas. So if I wake you up in the middle of the night, then you should tell me the following, the bottom line: don't drink between the 3rd and the 4th kos, and don't drink between the 4th and 5th kos. The Gemara says, Amalei Rav Chanan leRav Shmamina Birkas Hamazon to Una Kos. He's being medayik from the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that the 3rd kos is the kos of Birkas Hamazon. Why do I need a kos for Birkas Hamazon? Apparently, Birkas Hamazon, the whole year round, needs a kos. So does that mean when I eat a meal, just me, myself, and I bench at the end of the meal, I need a kos? So for this, we want to look at the Rush, which is quoted here in the footnote number Chaf Ches. The Rush says that only with regard to Birkas Hamazon Bezimun, then you need a kos. So 3 people benching together. Aval Birkas Hamazon shel yachid, I'm eating my own meal, right? I pass myself the bread, and I pass, and then I make I recite Birkas Hamazon. Eina tuna kos. That was clear. You don't need a kos. But then the question is the following: The diuk of Rav Chanan in our Mishnah was from the fact that the Mishnah in Dalit Kosos requires a kos of Birkas Hamazon for the third kos. Well, guess what? That's not zimun. I mean, it might be if you're lucky, but if you're eating your seder alone and you get to the wine, that's not yayin bezimun. And yet we want to be medayik from the fact that you must bring a kos yayin for Birkas Hamazon. It means that Birkas Hamazon tuna kos, and we're talking about a yachid. We're not talking about a zimun. At least we're not sure. We might not be talking about a zimun. He says, "Ein l'dayik mikach de b'shar yomim tzarich kos." So maybe we should medayik from the third kos of Birkas Hamazon, that even a yachid the whole year round will have a requirement of Birkas Hamazon ala kos. Became a shetiknu l'shlosha shemizamnim tiknu kos zeu afli yachid. So the kash I understand, the teretz I don't understand. So there are two principles here, neither of which I understand too well, but let's just formulate them mathematically. One is that there's a new halacha, a new entity in halacha, which is called Birkas Hamazon Bezimun. And the issue of whether or not Birkas Hamazon to una kos or lo to una kos revolves around this new entity, which is called Birkas Hamazon Bezimun. It's a different kind of Birkas Hamazon. It's not the Birkas Hamazon of Ruvain or Shimon or Levi, maybe even not the Birkas Hamazon of all three of them, Ruvain and Shimon and Levi in a partnership deal, but rather Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi reciting one Birkas Hamazon, one entity. And that's Birkas Hamazon Bezimun. And with regard to that entity, the Gemara is vacillating back and forth, but trying to be medayik from our Mishnah that it needs a kos. That upgraded new entity of Birkas Hamazon, which is the Birkas Hamazon of Zimun, that requires kos. Okay, then? That's principle number one. So I would say the following. That the Birkas Hamazon takes on a new profile or a new status when it's recited Bezimun. And it changes the nature of the bracha. It upgrades the bracha to a new level, and the nafkamina is going to be kos. right? We have a koshel bracha. What's a koshel bracha? It means that you machshiv the bracha to such extent, it gives it such a great status that it should be recited over a kos. Let's say it this way: the bracha itself is a new mitzvah, and that mitzvah impacts on the bracha, upgrades the bracha to a new status, such that now it requires accompaniment by a kos. I don't know, I'm not happy with it. There are many brachas that are recited as a mitzvah, but they don't require a kos. So maybe we could say it this way. That the relationship between the kos and the bracha is within the framework of a seuda. If the bracha is engendered by the seuda, then that's not going to work either. 1 second. Maybe we could say it this way. If the bracha has an element of shira, a special element of shira, I mean, every bracha is an expression of praise to Hashem, but there's certain brachos that are upgraded beyond shira, beyond shevach, to a level of shira. And once the bracha is transformed to a bracha of shira, then it requires a kos. The shira element that enhances the bracha and upgrades it makes that bracha into such a bracha chashuva that it should be accompanied by a kos. And this is reflective of the principle of Chazal, ein shira la yain. So we need the shira of that bracha to be accompanied or attached to a kos yain, so that it makes the shira la yain. So it means you have a bracha, you upgrade the bracha to level of shira, and then you add yayin to make it shira la yain. We'll see if that works. Now, regular Birkas Hamazon is not going to be upgraded to the status of shira. But if you gather together a zimun, like Yishem Hashem Ekra Havugol Elokeinu, takes on a new status of shira. However, with regard to Daled Kosos, and now we get to the second principle here, the bracha itself is shira by virtue of the kiyum of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. The Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim transforms and upgrades the bracha to a level of shira. Hence, it must be accompanied by yain. Is it a yachid? Is it a zimun? Makes no difference. Even the yachid, by reciting this bracha as part of the framework of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, that itself impacts and upgrades the bracha to a level of shira, which will generate a koshel bracha. You might ask me, so what's the Shema Mina Birkas Hamazon Tuna kos? Maybe it's not halacha in Birkas Hamazon. Maybe it's halacha in Daled Kosos. That because the kos, in this case the third kos, is part of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, therefore I need a kos. I'm sorry, what I meant to say was let me say it again. Because the bracha, meaning the third bracha, is part and parcel of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, it becomes upgraded to the status of Shira, and it requires a kos. That doesn't prove a thing about Birkas Hamazon in general. But the answer apparently is that we need a precedent to establish that Birkas Hamazon can, meaning it lends itself to being upgraded to the status of Shira. If Birkas Hamazon cannot be upgraded to the level of Shira, then even in Daled Kosos, even in Birkas Hamazon on the night of the Seder as part of Sipur, would not require a kos. But since we have a precedent, we have a breakthrough to prove and establish that Birkas Hamazon itself lends itself to be upgraded to the status of Shir. But when there are three people benching together, that Zimun entity impacts on the Birkas Hamazon and injects into the Birkas Hamazon an element of Shira, and that requires a kos. So you see that Birkas Hamazon lends itself to a Shira, then Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim could accomplish that same goal without Zimun. So you have Birkas Hamazon of Shira in one of two ways. Either you upgrade Birkas Hamazon to Shira because of the Zimun element that creates a whole new entity of Birkas Hamazon, or a Birkas Hamazon of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. In the first case, obviously, your Birkas Hamazon Shel Zimun requires three people eating together. That's going to upgrade the Birkas Hamazon and inject a new complexion, a new profile to that Birkas Hamazon, making it a Birkas Hamazon of Shira that must be accompanied by a kos. In the case of Daled Kosos, the Birkas Hamazon is upgraded to the status of Shira not by virtue of a Zimun, but by virtue of the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Hence, even in the Yom. That's the best I can do for the time being. Od Kosav Liyashev. This is a different Rosh. I mean, the same Rosh, but a different Simon. You want to hear this? The takana of Daled Kosos was made for three people having a joint Seder. I don't know, Rabbi, if you've ever been in a hotel for Pesach, for the Seder. Have you ever been? If you've ever been, okay, it depends on a lot of different factors here, including your financial ability. But let's say you go to a hotel for Pesach. They give you two options. We used to go, my wife and I, when the kids were young, we used to go to Shalavim. Yeshivat Shalavim used to run an entire Iruach Pesach, a hotel for the entire Pesach. And at the Seder night, they gave us two options. We could either join a communal Seder, which was run by one of the Rosh Yeshiva, or we could have our own private room. They made the classrooms there in Shalavim into little, like, chadarochel, you know what I'm saying? And we could have our own private Seder. And it never occurred to me that, decision had to be a halachic decision. It was more, we want to give our kids a little bit more attention and have our own Seder. Or on the contrary, we're very impressed, by the way they organize the communal Seder. You know what I'm saying? You gentlemen don't seem to have any idea what I'm talking about. No. Okay. But I'm just telling you now that as I read this quote of the Rosh, I'm inclined to think that one should perhaps advocate in favor of joining the communal Seder. Because he's telling me now that the Daled Kosos was established for a minimum of 3 men. What does that mean? I mean, if you have your own Seder, you don't drink the Daled Kosos. He's saying that there's a halacha of Echad Omer Ushnayim Onim. Part of the mitzvah of Sipri Tzisraim, we've said this over and over again, is Hallel. And in Hallel, we need Aniyah. In the ideal Hallel, there's Aniyah. Aniyah means responsive reading. One person says Hodu, and the other 2 people respond. Kili Olam Chazda. And since Hallel is an integral part of the mitzvah of Sipri Tzis Mitzrayim, we want to have a minimum of 3 people. Now, I'm not sure if it's 3 males and they have to be bar mitzvah. I don't know. Let's see if he says anything about that. Is Tiktu Din Zebelel Seder Gam Kshu B'Yochid. Aval B'Shar Yomim Eina Yochid Tzorech Kos LeBirkas HaMoseh. See, he seems to be setting up an equation here between the 3 for Zimun and the 3 for Hallel, for Aniyah, of Hodul Hashem. So I think, again, this is an embellishment of what we had before. He's not disagreeing with what he said up until now. I think he's just taking it a step further, and he's saying that the way Chazal organized Daled Kosos on Leila Pesach is to create a Shira and Hallel of a minimum of 3 people. That's the way they formulated it. Again, once they did so, they obligated even a Yachid without the ideal Hallel of 3 people of Aniyah. But the original, shall I say, the source or root takana, if I could use that term, was 3 people for the Aniyah of Hallel. And that gives you an element of Shira. And such a Hallel should be accompanied by a kos. So it's a brach of Shira because of the Aniyah, and that requires a kos. Because Memela, there's no kasha. We had a kasha. How can you derive from Daled Kosos that Birkas Hamoseh the whole year round needs kos? Maybe it's a din Misuyam, it's a separate din in Daled Kosos. And since the 3rd kos of Birkas Hamoseh is integrated into the structure for kosos as a kiyum of Sipur, that's why you require a kos. So the Birkas Hamoseh requires a kos to be mashlim those 4 kosos, but that's even for a yachid. And therefore, if you're going to jump to the conclusion that Birkas Hamoseh the whole year round requires accompaniment of a kos, then you're going to apply it even to a yachid. Name. The answer is no. We're only going to derive conclusions about a zimun of 3, because even even in terms of Daled Kosos, the original formulation and the original takon of Daled Kosos with regard to Leil HaSeder was for 3. Why? Because the brachos are upgraded to the status of Shira for the purpose of Hallel when there's a minimum of 3 people because of the Aniyah of Hodul Hashem Tito. Is Memela, I can extrapolate from that whenever Birkas Hamazon is upgraded to the status of three people who are reciting it together as a Shira, then it requires an accompaniment of a kos. Amalei, so Rava says, no. There's no proof from our Mishnah that Birkas Hamazon the whole year round requires a kos. Arba kosi tikina rabbanon derech cherus kol chad v'chad navid bei mitzvah. This is a separate halacha in Daled Kosos, that the Daled Kosos form an entity called Daled Kosos, 4 Kosos. We spoke about it many times, connected to Darba L'Shona Shel Geula. So he's got to drink 4 Kosos to demonstrate what? Cherus. If he's demonstrating Cherus through these Daled Kosos, then each kos is significant because of the derech cherus of the kos. And therefore, the Birkas Hamazon of Leil HaSeder is a different kind of Birkas Hamazon. It's a Birkas Hamazon of Sipri Yitzias Mitzrayim, and it requires a kos simply because of the halach of derech cherus. But Pesachim Os Hashana, that's the last line here, is Ein Birkas Hamazon Te'una Kos. Okay, then, so that's going to lead us here to the 4th kos. Till now, we're talking about the 3rd kos, and in Mitzvah Hashem, that we'll pick up tomorrow. So tomorrow, I start a little bit later because I'm having trouble with the electricity situation there, where I give the 8:30 Daf Yomi shir. It's called Daf Yomi Be'iv. So to be on the safe side, let's say that tomorrow will start at 9:50. Okay, then? So Chodesh Tov, and have a great day. So we'll have Sanhedrin in about 12 minutes.